Good morning readers, it's Tilly here from Tilly's Shelf and welcome to another bookish breakfast. So in contrast to most of April and the start of May, this week I've been reading a huge amount and a massive variety of things, and in order to prevent this video from being far too long, I've decided that I'm only going to talk to you about the books that I've finished, because I've finished some books, and again in contrast to April, they're not just plays and audiobooks and picture books. They are actual, some of them are actual books. Some of them aren't, but yeah. So I'm going to talk to you about the 5 books that I finished this week, and then I'm also going to talk to you about the 3 books that I've bought. So hopefully I'll be able to keep it relatively short. Yeah, so like I said, I'm on annual leave, and the way that I am arranging my annual leave is I'm trying to stick to a bit of a timetable so that I don't end up wasting a lot of time. And basically that timetable involves reading in 4 different ways, at least, over the course of the day. So definitely getting a lot of reading done, and in a lot of different genres and styles. So to start with things that I have finished, if you remember, it's been a while since I held this one up. This is my goals book, and I'm writing all of the books that I finish onto the calendar page, and yeah, that's March and April, and then the start of May was nothing at all, and then this is where we are now. So yeah, it's picking up. So the first thing that I finished this week was Pride and Prejudice. I'm not sure how much this counts as reading a proper book, because I've read it, I don't even know how many times now, and I talked about it last week as well, about just, enjoying the process of rereading it. This edition has got an afterword by somebody called Henry Hitchings, and the interesting thing that he pointed out that I hadn't really noticed is the prevalence of letter writing in the book. So he says that 40 letters are written or are quoted or strongly referenced to over the course of it, which at first I thought, my goodness, can there really be 40 letters? But if you think about it, there's a lot of little notes that get passed around, like Caroline inviting Jane to and from Netherfield and things like that. So it does make sense. And the idea is that he suggests is that in a society where young men and women and older men and women, but were specifically focused on young men and women, were expected to perform at every social occasion, writing letters was the one way in which they could, in a measured way, express their true feelings, I suppose, or be a bit more open about their thoughts and feelings, with the catch being that, for instance, Elizabeth and Darcy can't get into a full correspondence, because that would imply that they were engaged, and that would kind of implicate their, is honour the word that I'm looking for? And their respectability, I suppose. So yes, I was interested to read that afterward, and I definitely enjoyed it. I had a little patch in the middle where there was a lot of Mr. Collins, where I slowed down a lot, but then it picked back up again and just became delightful. I just love the wittiness of everything, but particularly the wittiness of the dialogue between Darcy and Elizabeth, and that's one of the things that makes this book a constant delight to me. So the next thing that I finished, I need to look back to remember, was, I didn't bring it down, Falling Awake by Alice Oswald, which is a book of poetry. So again, I read the first half of that maybe about a month ago, and then finished the final long poem, Tithonus. I think it's called Tithonus, which is an imagining of the dawn occurring, and I spoke about that, I think, last week, just about how it didn't really seem very inspiring to me. When I reread it, I enjoyed it slightly more, which I find often with poetry, but I still didn't find that it was quite rich enough, I suppose. I didn't feel like it really stirred me emotionally. I did like the final page of the poem, which kind of was presented almost like it was a different poem, but yeah, it was good, but it wasn't great. So that was Falling Awake by Alice Oswald. I read that because Roz said it was one of her favourite books of modern poetry, and I asked her, I'm trying to read more modern poetry, and I asked Roz for a recommendation, and she gave me that one, and I'm glad that she did recommend it, but I don't think I would probably go to Alice Oswald first again. Then the next thing that I read, again I don't have it to wave, was The Apology of Socrates by Plato. So I read that on Serial Reader, which is why I can't hold it up. It's only 4 issues long, so it's relatively short. And yeah, I was just looking for something to have on Serial Reader to just kind of get me reading something. And it seemed to fit in with my project to try and read more kind of like older stuff, I suppose. It was interesting. I don't know any of the background to it, so I'm sure there's a lot of people on BookTube who can tell you kind of the history and the story and the motivations for writing it. But it's basically written like one side of a dialogue between Socrates and his accusers and the court who are sentencing him. And you only hear what Socrates says, but you can infer what the others have said from the way that he responds. And generally he makes these long speeches where he uses a lot of metaphor in order to convey his points about why he is not actually a corrupter of youth and why he shouldn't really be in front of the courts at all, and eventually then to reason about or to discuss the fact that he has been condemned to death. So it was interesting. It's obviously not like a gripping and exciting read. I found it quite paradoxical. Because he's like a prophet in the idea that he promises that he speaks, the whole truth and nothing but the truth and all of that, and basically accuses everybody else of lying. But he also then says that he's inspired at every step by, visions and instructions from oracles and goddesses and gods and so on, which... he's either having some very, very rational psychosis or he's not telling the truth about that. Or, I'm wrong about the structure of the universe and the Greeks had it right. But then I was wondering whether that was something that could have been kind of embellished by Plato, if he was kind of seeking to create a kind of prophet-like character for Socrates. I don't know. I'm sure people have developed theories of these things, and it might have just been that was sort of the way people spoke in those days. And it's difficult because it's something that we don't really have an accurate background to, I think, because we don't have anything that Socrates has written from Socrates himself, so we've only got it from Plato, and Plato could have just made it all up. Who knows? I'd imagine some of you know better than me, and if so, please let me know. And then the next thing that I finished yesterday was the Da Vinci Code, and I can show you that on the Kindle. There we go. By Dan Brown, and this was published in 2003, and it was a massive hit back in 2003 when I was maybe a little bit too young to get involved in that. So basically I read this because somebody had left a copy lying around in the hot area at work, and once something paper-based has been brought onto the hot unit, it can't be taken out again, just in case it were to carry something out on it. So we had a set of nights where, fortunately, the number of cases in our area has decreased quite a lot, and just out of curiosity, at one point I started flicking through the start of the Da Vinci Code, and it interested me enough that then when I went home I wanted to continue to read it. So I got it on the Kindle. Roz was kind enough, or my dad rather, because it's my dad's account that this Kindle is attached to, he was kind enough to let me get it on the Kindle, and yeah, he's going to be getting all sorts of suggestions now that are based on this. I think Amazon's probably pretty keen for me to then read the next one, but I'm not fussed enough that I want to read anything else by Dan Brown. I did enjoy it. It's got quite a lot of pace to it, but it frustrated me on numerous levels. And this is a book that is a light read, but it feels like an intellectual read. It's designed to make you feel clever as you read it, because it's all based on patterns of symbols and secret meanings and so on, and you guess a couple of them because they're pretty obvious, and when you guess them you're like, ooh, I got it right. It's a bit like a detective story in that way, but I found it a lot easier to guess than most detective stories because it's very logical, so it's quite easy to add the points together. And I think that's kind of deliberate. I think he wants you to have that kind of buzz of feeling like you're participating in cracking the code. So it starts with a murder, and the murder victim leaves a message for the people who will find him that is intended to set them on a quest to uncover an ancient secret. One of the problems I had was that I just didn't care enough about this ancient secret. So they go ahead and explain like background to the secret, and by the time they've explained all of the background to the secret, I felt like you pretty much knew the secret, and the secret itself was immaterial because you knew everything that there was to know really about it, and it was all kind of hidden in plain sight, and it wouldn't really change anything if they had the secret anyway. And at the end of the book, they don't, I feel like it's a bit of a cop-out from Dan Brown. He doesn't really tell you what the secret is at the end, which, yeah, frustrated me a little bit, and it's a ploy to get you to read the next book. Or it's because he didn't have anything interesting enough to put as the secret. I can't make up my mind which. So yeah, they set out on this quest. They go to solve this secret, and two frustrating things were he is obsessed with cliffhangers, but not in a good way. So there's numerous scenes where it's like he gets to the end of a chapter and somebody's like, he opened the box and what he saw inside it stunned him. To me, it's enough to just say he opened the box. If you say he opened the box, I want to read the next chapter to find out what it is that's inside the box. But if you say he opened the box and, you know, he was flabbergasted by what he saw, I don't think he ever uses the word flabbergasted, then I get frustrated because I can see that the writer is really deliberately withholding information from me and really deliberately trying to force me to read ahead by trying to artificially raise the stakes of the cliffhanger and make it more suspenseful. It doesn't really work on me, it's just frustrating. I think a more subtle approach generally works better. And that happens again and again where there are scenes where you know that a character has a certain piece of information and they just think about it. They're like, oh, she thought about what she saw all those years ago, but it doesn't tell you for chapter after chapter after chapter. And doing that once whets your interest, but doing it 5 times before you reveal the information just makes you roll your eyes a little bit. And the other thing that annoyed me was there was a male character and a female character, and they work really well together as a duo. They collaborate to solve the puzzle, and then at the end they suddenly kiss, and there is just absolutely zero chemistry. But there's points where you can tell the author is trying to add chemistry, and it just drops like a lead balloon. It does not work at all, and I just feel like they could have just left that without a relationship in it. It didn't need anyone to snog at the end. It was just a kind of mystery story, and the mystery was solved apart from not revealed. So yes, that was another thing that annoyed me. But all of that said, I enjoyed it, and I would probably recommend it to anybody who likes a good mystery book. It's, you know, it's as good in terms of mystery enjoyment. It's as good as most detective stories, I think. Better than quite a few. So yeah, I would recommend it, but bear in mind that there's bits that are a little bit annoying. I'm not doing very well with keeping it short so far, am I? And then the final book that I read, I finished this morning, and it's not really a book, it's like a short story really, and it's called The Monkey's Paw by W.W. Jacobs. So I read this book because it was mentioned in the 50 Ideas You Need to Know About Literature book by John Sutherland that I'm reading, under the concept of irony. And apparently this story is, well, it is very rich in irony. So it's a classic, I think it's Victorian ghost story where an old soldier who's been serving in India comes to somebody's house, and they tell this dramatic story which, given the era, is based on, you know, Indian mysticism. It's very kind of Orientalist, I suppose, or however you'd call it, but very, you know, like, oh, they enchanted this monkey's paw. But if you put that aside, then it's got, you know, suspense, it's got foreshadowing, it's got candles blowing out, it's got people knocking on the door in the middle of the night, it's got all that kind of drama stuff that you expect from a good ghost story. You could definitely tell this gathered around a fire, or, you know, late at night, as just a general like little spooky tale. And there is a monkey's paw that grants the bearer 3 wishes, but it never quite comes out how it's supposed to come out. and the main protagonist is a retired man who actually says, I don't know what I would wish for. I'm happy with my life. I don't really need anything else. And his son's like, oh, but there's probably one thing that would make you a little bit happier. Why don't you wish for that one thing, and then your life will be complete? And so he does, with terrible consequences. It's really short. I enjoyed it. I would say just go ahead and read it and see what you think. It's, like I said, it's on Serial Reader and it's only 2 issues long if you were to want to read that. So that was all the books that I finished this week. I just wanted to do a bit more book waving, so I'm going to show you the books that I bought this week. So for those of you who are more into the YA booktube will know that this is the week that the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes came out. This is a prequel to The Hunger Games, and because I love The Hunger Games so much, and because it's lockdown and we're all bored and we can't go to bookshops and stuff, I decided to pre-order it, which I don't normally do. The only times I've pre-ordered... So I pre-ordered The Mirror and the Light and The Book of Dust, and these were like my first forays into the pre-ordering world. But yeah, I just kind of thought that there's going to be a lot of hype about it, and I'm probably going to want to participate. And I would say it's a beautiful book. It's a thing of beauty. I haven't started reading it yet because I've been reading other things, but it's gorgeous. So it's yellow. It's got a snake on it, and then every single chapter. Like, they've obviously put a decent amount of thought, and I'm trying to find a chapter header, a decent amount of time into putting this book together. Every single chapter has got an embellishment, which is a little snake on one side or the other. The snake is, of course, representative of President Snow. Did I already show you that one? So it's got a nice snake on the end cover as well. And then at the end, it's got like a reader's guide, which is decorated with a little bird. And the bird, I'm guessing, is going to be representative of the girl from District 12, in an echo of how the Mockingjay represents Katniss. So President Snow, who is not President Snow at the moment, is an 18-year-old, and he winds up mentoring the District 12 girl for the 10th annual Hunger Games. I'm thinking this is the girl who was mentioned as District 12 has had 2 winners and one of them's dead. So this is going to be the girl who is dead by the time that Katniss is around. And yeah, I'm just interested to see how she develops that character. It's a lot bigger than the Hunger Games books. I think she might have got carried away a little bit. And when I recently reread The Hunger Games, I opened it and I realised that it was in first person present tense, and I was like, oh no, this is gonna suck. And it really didn't. That mode of delivery really, really works for the Hunger Games books. So when I opened this one and found that it's in third person past tense, I was pretty disappointed actually, and I'm worried that the pacing in this is not going to live up to the pacing of the Hunger Games, and then it's going to be long and it's not going to be as good, and I'm going to be disappointed. But it's beautiful. It's going to satisfy my wish to complete the story, I suppose, and participate in, people talking about it on BookTube, which is part of the point. And it didn't cost me too much, which is the other thing that I'm kind of like balancing against it. So Waterstones are very kindly doing a health service discount, and I also combined that with some loyalty card points and things, and I got 2 other books included in what was the original price of that book. So I feel happy with that. So the other book that I got was Around the World in 80 Trains by Monisha Rajesh. So Waterstones successfully sold me this in an email. They told me that it was going to be amazing, so I bought it, and I think it was just because it happened to be on the same day that I was ordering that. And it's really good so far. So she, as you can tell from the title, goes on a train journey with her partner around the world, and so far they have just reached China, so they've been on the Trans-Mongolian Railway. I have to say I enjoy it more when she's recounting kind of anecdotes and discussions with people that they're sharing their carriages with, and slightly less when she is like being excessively interested in the beauty of the world. Yeah, I was going to try and read you a bit, but I don't think I'm going to be able to find the bit. Oh yeah. As I absorbed the enormity of what we had achieved. Over the previous 11 days, the Trans-Mongolian had shown me that there were no real beginnings or endings, borders or boundaries. I'd watched lakes grow into seas, mountains rise then recede, deserts expand then shrink. Passengers had come and gone with a gradation of features that sharpened and darkened from one end of the line to the other. For days, the train's trajectory across space and wilderness had plagued me with a feeling of displacement, the state of being in between. But now I had a greater sense of place than ever before, bearing witness to the truth that the world was small, close and connected. I don't really like that kind of passage. I would rather she stuck to the more day-to-day details that are more kind of entertaining and lively. But definitely this book makes me want to go and hop on a train as soon as I can, really. I think one of the reasons that I wanted to get it is because if I were to ever go on a long trip, I would be wanting to incorporate trains as far as possible. I have done a little bit of train travel, mostly in Europe. I would say my favourite public transport mode has been the bus, and normally like a minibus, when I've been away from England. I definitely don't like long distance buses in England. But yeah, trains and buses would be my preferred way over planes to travel long distance. So I wanted to see what kind of routes that she took. And it's good so far. And then finally, I had to add something else to get free delivery. Even though they ended up sending the book separately, it doesn't make any sense. So it was just the day after I'd done the Spring-a-thon poetry challenge, when I talked about a poem called Night Flight from Muncaster by Jo Shapcott. And I was trying to find that poem online and I couldn't find it, and I was really sad because it's a poem that I really liked. And then I read some reviews of Jo Shapcott's poetry collections, and this is of Mutability, and I ended up just buying it. And I thought, I've said that I want to read more poetry, and I know that this is a poet that I enjoy at least one poem by, so I'll give it a go. And so far I have read about 6 or 7 poems, and I've enjoyed all of them. I think I definitely like Jo Shapcott more than Alice Oswald. This is from longer ago. I think this is from sort of 90s, so maybe it's a kind of era of poetry thing. But I like the way that she talks about, she uses kind of metaphors around the body, and there's a lot of water in these poems as well. So that was the 3 books that I bought, and those were the 5, did I finish 5 books? However many books I finished. And I'm sorry that this has been so long-winded. Thank you very much for watching. I'm hoping to keep up. I want to, while I'm on annual leave, I would like to finish a book a day. I don't know how possible that is. It's going to mean that I'll read a lot of maybe shorter books. But if I could, that would be quite fun. And other than that, I'm basically just gardening and stuff. Have a lovely day, and thank you for watching, and take care. Bye.